Welcome in. It's just a real pleasure to have you join us today.
Absolutely. Really glad you're here listening.
Yeah, and if you're drawn to well, the hidden architecture of history, I guess you'd call it, those quiet innovators operating just outside the spotlight.
Right, the people who actually build the legends but never get the credit.
Exactly. If you like those kinds of stories, this is going to be a really fascinating exploration for you. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the life of Randolph Osborne Douglas.
Also known somewhat loosely by his stage name, the Great Randini.
The Great Randini. It's just a remarkable narrative
Hmm.
because, we have Harry Houdini,
Right.
a towering historical icon. His name is universally synonymous with escapology and stage magic.
Oh, completely. You say escapology, you mean Houdini.
But existing right in the margins of Houdini's sprawling legacy is this brilliant, meticulous young man from Sheffield.
And his mechanical ingenuity fundamentally altered the trajectory of modern magic, which is what we're digging into today.
We are. And our source material guiding us today centers around a really highly detailed Wikipedia article compiling the known history of Douglas.
It covers his early life in Edwardian England, his clandestine contributions to Houdini's repertoire.
And that deeply eccentric micromuseum he eventually curated, we'll get to that. It's wild.
He really is.
So our mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we want to uncover the precise mechanics of how this boy from the north of England shaped the world's most famous illusionist.
And second, we want to examine how profound physical limitations can actually serve as an unexpected catalyst for just unparalleled creativity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because understanding Douglas requires us to look past the velvet curtains of stage magic and delve directly into the mathematics and engineering of illusion.
That framing is essential, really, because we traditionally view innovation in this era as a top-down process.
Right, the master invents, the apprentice watches.
Exactly. The established master conceptualizes, the apprentices follow. But the dynamic between Houdini and Douglas subverts that entirely.
It totally replaces the mysticism of magic with rigorous mechanical pragmatism.
Yeah, let's look at the origins of that pragmatism.
Yeah.
Randolph Osborne Douglas was born in 1895 and raised in Endcliffe, near Sheffield.
And from a very early age, he had this intense fascination with Houdini's work.
But not in the normal way.
Right. He wasn't just, collecting newspaper clippings or following tour dates.
No, he approached the phenomenon like a reverse engineer.
He actually procured actual locks, chains, and get this, a full straitjacket to study as a boy.
Which indicates he recognized early on that escapes were not miracles, they were puzzles governed by physics.
Just a kid sitting in his room with a straitjacket.
To understand a lock in the early 20th century, whether it was a warded lock or an early pin tumbler design, you had to comprehend tension,
Right.
shear lines, internal spring mechanisms. He needed to physically manipulate their restraints to map out their vulnerabilities.
And that hands-on approach culminated in a really unlikely intersection of two very different worlds.
The meet cute of magic history.
Yeah, exactly. Douglas attended a live performance by Houdini at the Sheffield Empire Theatre. And remarkably, while still just a teenager, he managed to secure an introduction with the illusionist.
What's fascinating here is the nature of their interaction. Because Douglas did not approach Houdini with the awe of a standard spectator.
He didn't ask for an autograph.
No, he approached him as a peer in mechanical deconstruction. He was fundamentally an amateur locksmith who viewed these grandiose stage escapes through the lens of tumblers and tension mathematics.
It strips the illusion away completely.
It does. When you apply that level of mechanical rigor to stage magic, you are left with an engineering problem. And Douglas had a unique talent for solving those problems.
And that interaction clearly left an impression on Houdini because it sparked this rigorous correspondence between the two of them.
They frequently exchanged letters via the Magic Circle in London.
Right, the organization dedicated to illusion. And if you visit the Buxton Museum today, you can actually still find these letters preserved among Douglas's belongings.
And analyzing those documents reveals something incredible. Douglas was essentially acting as a remote research and development department for Houdini.
Feeding him novel stage designs, mechanical solutions.
The contrast is striking. You have the globe-trotting superstar commanding stages across
Yeah, the
continents.
teenager in Sheffield providing the architectural blueprints for the impossible.
Douglas possessed the mechanical brilliance to design the puzzle, while Houdini had the unparalleled stagecraft, the charisma, and the physical conditioning to execute it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Douglas did not merely offer minor adjustments to existing routines.
No, he engineered entirely new concepts.
According to William Kalush's biography, The Secret Life of Houdini, Douglas was the actual architect of the upside-down escape,
An innovation that Kalush explicitly states changed the course of magic's history.
which is huge.
The historical weight of that cannot be overstated. The suspended straitjacket escape was an evolution of Houdini's existing ground-level routine.
Right, wriggling out on the floor.
But introducing the element of being inverted created an entirely new paradigm of peril.
It turned a stage trick into a monumental open-air spectacle.
Crowds would gather in city streets, staring up at a man suspended from a crane or a building, risking his life in midair.
And the sheer physics involved in executing an escape while inverted are incredibly complex. You aren't just dealing with canvas and leather anymore.
Gravity is actively working against your respiratory system.
The weight of your own organs presses down on your lungs. It makes it physically exhausting just to draw breath.
Furthermore, the blood rushes to your head, altering your spatial awareness, spiking your blood pressure.
Precisely. To slip a buckle or deliberately dislocate a shoulder to gain slack requires an acute awareness of your center of gravity.
And when that center is reversed, the standard mechanics of the escape just fail.
So Douglas had to mathematically account for the altered tension on the ropes, the shifted weight distribution of the human body.
He had to engineer a method that was biomechanically viable under extreme physiological stress.
Which makes the moment he presented this concept to Houdini all the more striking.
An amazing scene.
We have an account of this meeting from Douglas's stepmother. She gave an interview to the publication The World's Fair in 1938.
Houdini was visiting Sheffield for a run at the Empire Theatre and paid a visit to the Douglas family home.
And the environment she describes is just wonderfully mundane compared to the stakes of the trick.
They're sitting in a standard English living room.
A parlor.
Right. And there, Douglas, this amateur locksmith, demonstrates the concept.
It is a profound image. You have a teenager taking a straitjacket, chains, and locks, and having himself suspended upside down right there in the family living room,
Hanging inverted.
enduring all of that immediate physical strain. And he calmly dictates the precise mechanics of the escape to the most famous illusionist on the planet.
Showing him exactly how to exploit the tension to free himself.
Yeah.
It is a masterclass in mechanical authority. He didn't pitch a theoretical concept. He presented a fully engineered, practically tested solution.
Right there in the house.
He demonstrated how the strict mechanics of the restraints and the physical limitations of the human body could be manipulated in tandem to achieve something the public would view as supernatural.
Now, given that level of brilliance, you would naturally assume Douglas was on the precipice of his own legendary career.
That the foundation was laid for the great Randini to become a global phenomenon in his own right.
Exactly. But the trajectory of his life was abruptly altered by the outbreak of the First World War.
His aspirations of becoming a performing escapologist were entirely derailed.
This is a really tragic turn.
It's a pivotal transition in his biography, shifting from a narrative of ascendant genius to one of severe physical and psychological adversity.
Douglas was drafted.
And the physical demands of soldier training during that era were notoriously brutal. Forced marches, exposure to harsh elements, relentless physical exhaustion.
And Douglas already suffered from underlying ill health, so this environment was devastating.
His condition was exacerbated to the point where he was ultimately discharged from the military, officially deemed physically unfit for duty.
Let's consider the specific physical requirements of an escapologist for a second.
It's demanding.
It demands peak cardiovascular health, supreme joint flexibility, absolute granular control over your muscular system.
Right.
To have your entire ambition built around defying physical restraints, breaking out of chains, fighting through canvas, only to have your own body become a failing mechanism you cannot escape.
It's a profound psychological blow.
It really is.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the defining characteristic of Douglas's intellect.
How he pivoted.
Exactly. Faced with an insurmountable physical barrier that permanently closed the door on stage performance, he didn't abandon his obsession with constraints.
He completely reimagined the scale of his work.
He took all of that intense focus, the mechanical problem solving that would have gone into full-body escapes, and channeled it entirely into the microscopic.
And that pivot is brilliantly illustrated by a specific detail chronicled in Ann Beadham's book, Randini, The Man Who Helped Houdini.
This is one of my favorite details.
Yeah. It's amazing. Unable to manipulate heavy chains or vault off bridges, Douglas turned to miniature engineering. He crafted a tiny, fully functional padlock.
But the materials he chose are what make this remarkable.
Yes. He built it using bullet cases and his own army cap badge.
The significance of those materials is just profound.
From a psychological standpoint, this is a masterstroke of reclamation. The bullet cases and the military insignia are the literal, tangible symbols of the wartime machinery that broke his health.
The things that stripped him of his future on the stage.
By dismantling those objects and meticulously re-engineering them into a functioning lock, he is exerting total control over his trauma.
He is taking the very elements that represented his physical limitations and forcing them to yield to his precise mechanical will.
He literally bound his trauma, locked it away, and turned it into an intricate piece of art.
He is an extraordinary act of psychological resilience. When the macro universe, the world of theaters, military service, physical stamina denied him entry, he became the undisputed architect of his own micro universe.
His mastery over his environment remained absolute. It just occupied a fraction of the physical space.
So following his discharge, Douglas had to construct a new life around these altered circumstances.
Right. He gathered his extensive collection of locksmithing tools, native spears, mineral specimens, all these curiosities, and relocated to Castleton, a village in Derbyshire.
And in 1926, he married Harriet Bown.
Known as Hetty.
Hetty, yes. And the relocation to Castleton facilitated the creation of one of the most unique environments we've explored in these deep dives.
They moved into a cottage, but they fundamentally altered its purpose. They split the residence straight down the middle.
One half for living, the other half for art.
One half served as their living quarters, while the other half was transformed into the Douglas Museum, the House of Wonders,
which officially opened to the public around Easter of 1926.
And the title House of Wonders perfectly encapsulates the duality of his new life.
It suggests a space that is both deeply intimate and intellectually expansive.
And the method by which Douglas exhibited his creations was so deliberate. Visitors would pay a modest entrance fee, but they were not simply turned loose in a brightly lit gallery.
No, Douglas personally guided them through the exhibits.
And the entire tour was conducted by torchlight.
Flashlight, yeah. That sensory environment is crucial to understand. The use of a single focused beam of light in a darkened room is not merely an atmospheric choice.
It's a mechanism of absolute control.
By narrowing the visitor's field of vision to a solitary, illuminated circle, Douglas was dictating their focus,
eliminating peripheral distractions,
forcing them to engage entirely with the miniature marvel in front of them. It is the exact same psychological principle a stage magician uses when employing misdirection under a spotlight.
He was still performing, just in a highly controlled, intimate setting.
And the objects he revealed in that torchlight were staggering feats of microengineering.
Creations that challenged the limits of human dexterity. For instance, he displayed the Lord's Prayer written out in its entirety on a single piece of thread.
And that thread was threaded directly through the eye of a needle.
Think about the physiology required to achieve that. We discussed his failing health, yet the execution of such a piece demands the steady hands of a master watchmaker or a surgeon.
It requires operating under intense magnification, managing your own breath control,
timing your microscopic movements between the beats of your own heart to avoid the slightest tremor.
The museum was filled with these testaments to extreme precision. He built a fully functional motor that was small enough to fit completely underneath a standard sewing thimble.
A working motor.
Another exhibit featured a miniature greenhouse. And it wasn't just a hollow glass structure. It was fully realized, containing individual potted plants inside.
And the entire construction was small enough to rest comfortably on a human thumbnail.
It represents the absolute pinnacle of focus. And returning to our earlier comparison, the contrast between Houdini and Douglas becomes perfectly crystallized here.
Houdini's art was defined by sprawling, monumental spectacles, suspensions over city streets, escapes from frozen rivers,
commanding the attention of tens of thousands of people in broad daylight.
While Douglas's art was defined by microscopic intimacy, a working motor beneath a thimble revealed to a handful of people in a darkened cottage via flashlight.
Yet the underlying principles governing both men's work were identical.
Exactly identical.
Both required a granular understanding of mechanics, absolute precision in execution, and a profound grasp of how to manipulate human perception to make an audience question the boundaries of reality.
They were utilizing the same foundational skills, they merely applied them at polar opposite ends of the physical spectrum.
And Douglas clearly recognized this parallel. He ensured his connection to Houdini remained a central component of the House of Wonders.
Alongside the microscopic motors and threaded prayers, the museum featured artifacts from their years of collaboration.
Visitors were shown the specific locks that Houdini had gifted to Douglas.
And serving as tangible proof of their history, there was a photograph from 1920 displaying Randolph Osborne Douglas and Harry Houdini standing side by side outside the Sheffield Empire Theatre.
It grounded his miniature marvels in a broader historical context. It served as a subtle reminder to his visitors that the man guiding them through the dark with a flashlight was a peer and confidant to the most celebrated illusionist of the era.
Douglas lived out the remainder of his life in that Derbyshire cottage, continuing to curate and expand his microscopic universe until he passed away in 1956 at the age of 61.
However, the House of Wonders did not close its doors with his passing.
No, his wife Hetty took over the sole operation of the museum, maintaining the exhibits and giving the tools for another 22 years until her own death in 1978.
That decades-long stewardship by Hetty is just a profound testament to their partnership and the cultural value she recognized in his life's work.
Thankfully, that work has been carefully preserved. Following Hetty's passing, the Douglas collection was acquired by the Buxton Museum and Art Gallery in Derbyshire, where it is frequently brought out for public display and academic study.
In fact, Douglas's lifelong dedication to locks and keys eventually achieved a monumental level of recognition.
It did. When the BBC launched their sprawling, highly regarded project, A History of the World in 100 Objects, the Buxton Museum selected the Randolph Douglas Lock and Key collection as their official contribution to the national narrative.
To have your meticulous, solitary work elevated to a list, defining the scope of human history, is an incredible legacy for an amateur locksmith whose physical limitations forced him to retreat from the world stage.
So what does this all mean? Exploring the sources behind Randolph Osborne, Douglas serves as a potent reminder that the history we accept is often incomplete.
Very true.
Behind the towering figures whose names dominate the marquees, there are frequently quiet, fiercely intelligent architects operating the shadows, drafting the blueprints for those very legends.
Douglas lacked the physical fortitude to conquer the global stage, yet his mechanical genius provided the key to the stunts that secured Houdini's immortality.
It's an amazing dynamic.
This raises an important question, one that challenges how we evaluate historical legacy, and something I encourage you to consider after we wrap up today.
Yeah.
It centers on the true nature of attribution and fame. If Randolph Osborne Douglas had possessed the cardiovascular health and physical endurance to execute his own inverted escapes, would the name Randini be etched into our cultural memory as deeply as Houdini is today?
That's a great question.
It forces you to evaluate what we are actually applauding when we witness the impossible. Is the true magic found in the solitary, quiet genius of engineering a miracle in a suburban living room? Or does it inherently lie in the charismatic endurance and sheer willpower required to endure that miracle and sell it to the world?
That is a phenomenal layer to add to the story and a perfect place to leave our analysis. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the House of Wonders. Keep looking for the unseen mechanics behind the history you thought you knew, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.